And welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to another edition of the Chokeslam Wrestling Debate. I am JTH, the only thing that's more over than an Alex Wright dance move. I would do it, but we're not even going to waste our time with that. So we're into the second round of the semifinals of this tournament. We've got Nico Regoli, we've got Jim Green, where Richard Schwartz is going to be lying in wait in the championship match. We're going to find out which one of these worthy competitors will be facing him. So if anybody wishes to speak up about their opponent, do so now or forever hold your peace.
We've faced several times before, and only once has Jim beaten me, and I do not intend for that one to become two tonight. I want another shot at another title, and I plan on getting it tonight. I've put in a lot of work getting these arguments ready. I don't know if Jim has put in any work at all. We'll see, but I'm feeling confident about my chances, and Eli got a point on me. I don't want that to happen in this match. I want to go 3-0 perfect. Leave no doubt.
I don't count the number of times I play Nico because he's never on my mind because I don't care. He's the best manager of people who Jeremy Hastings, who win stuff and then a bunch of losers. Just like the Orlando four-way that he is not even going to be in, he's going to get destroyed in this.
Ha!
Well, that was something. All right. Kind of disappointed I even did that now. So moving on now. For anybody out there that's a first-time viewer of this is basically how the rules are going to be. It's going to be the first to three. However, there are 4 main round questions in the opening debates, which means we can have a 3-0 knockout. If by any chance a person does not have 3 points by the end of the 4 main round questions, we will have a speed round question until we determine a winner. So without further ado, let's get into this with the first question. We're going to start with the granddaddy of them all, Wrestlemania. We've had some great entrances over the years in this wonderful spectacle of wrestling, but we want to ask both of our players, what is the best Wrestlemania entrance of all time? Now, how this worked, both of our players selected 2 specific genres of category in wrestling. This was Jim's selection of Wrestlemania. So because he selected the category, we're going to go to Nico first and find out what Nico chose for his selection. So, Nico, what is your best all-time Wrestlemania entrance?
The best entrances are the ones that go perfectly with the potential for something to go very, very wrong. New Day's Budio's box entrance was brilliant, but it had the potential to go very wrong. Rusev's tank entrance was brilliant, but it also had the potential to go very wrong. No other entrance, however, has had a higher potential to go horribly wrong, only for everything to go perfectly right, than Shawn Michaels, Mr. WrestleMania himself, descending into his domain on a zip line for a 60-minute Iron Man match with Bret Hart at WrestleMania 12. Wrestling fans understand the danger factor when it comes to the use of zip lines, but very few things actually go wrong for Shawn Michaels when it comes to WrestleMania. And this entrance had everyone in the crowd either standing and cheering or they were on the edge of their seats in anticipation for something to give. Would he fall or would he stick the landing? And the anticipation carried over into the Iron Man match itself as the crowd was either standing and cheering or they were on the edge of their seats for 65 minutes straight, waiting in anticipation for either Shawn or Bret to give. Shawn Michaels, zip line, Iron Man match, WrestleMania 12.
All right. Kind of funny you brought up Mr. WrestleMania because technically I'm Mr. WrestleMania. NIWA, Mr. WrestleMania JTH. Google it. You'll find out it's true. So let's go to Jim. What is Jim going to counter with his best WrestleMania entrance?
I am going with the entrance where it all began again in Madison Square Garden, WrestleMania 20, and that is the re-debut of the Dead Man character in The Undertaker's entrance. This was the match of, first of all, was just a squash match, so this is the most memorable part of that match, and yeah, pretty much. But the Deadman gimmick had been gone for a long time while he was doing the American Badass gimmick. And so that disappeared for a little bit. And it was like, oh, and they did some stuff leading up to this entrance to kind of like, is Undertaker going to be at WrestleMania? And is Undertaker going to blah, blah, blah? And it was one of the first more. It was one of the first modern WrestleMania entrants where there was like people and props and stuff in it. And it was one of the biggest pops of the night in that Madison Square Garden building at WrestleMania 20. So that is why I am going with the Undertaker WrestleMania 20.
All right. Good picks by both of our players. So when both of our players are ready, the 5-minute debate period will begin when the first person begins speaking.
So SportingNews.com did a list of the greatest WrestleMania entrances of all time. Jim, your entrance was number 4 on that list. My entrance was number 2. Also, WWE's YouTube channel did a top 20 playlist of the greatest Mania entrances of all time. And on that playlist, your entrance was number 2. Mine was number 1. So even
that's
WWE...
awesome. That I don't think either of those matter because that doesn't support. The only thing that supports is that yours is higher on lists, on subjective lists done by other people, not why the entrance itself was better.
But if the company itself thinks that my entrance is better than yours, then that's saying something.
The company itself thinks like John Cena is the greatest person of all time. That doesn't mean he is.
They don't push him anymore, though, so that opinion is obviously outdated.
It's not relevant to the conversation.
But also, the problem with your entrance is that it's pretty much the same thing Undertaker has done for years now when he's not the
for years now. But this was the re-debut of the character, the American Badass. That was awesome. He had his chopper, blah blah blah. That was a cool entrance to begin with. But
that's in that moment, it's probably good. But now looking back on it, it's not that great. He's doing the same thing he always does, which is walking slowly down the ramp, looking scary and big as he normally does. The main difference between WrestleMania 12 and what he usually does is. WrestleMania 20 is WrestleMania 20. He had a bunch of reject Sith Lords escorting him to the ring.
And he had with the fire, and it was amazing. But you keep want to bring up like, oh, this is what he's been doing, blah 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 blah. But he had not done this. He was just the regular Undertaker. I mean, before American Badass, there wasn't this whole like gimmick of the Dead Man. He was the Undertaker and he was the Dead Man, but he didn't have the duster and the hat. This was the debut of that version of the Dead Man, as well as the re-debut of the Dead Man himself. And the point was that this had story building up to it months prior. They started to build this up to where, oh, is the Undertaker going to be here? Yours is just a good like flash in the pan moment.
You want to talk about story?
What stories behind your entrance? You're about to give me an argument talking about the match itself. We're not talking about the match itself.
But here's the thing.
Entrance doesn't have really anything behind it.
Entrances foreshadow the type of match you are going to get, and your entrance was slow and plodding, and it foreshadowed the slow and plodding match.
He's doing exactly what I said he was going to do. He's going to start making it about the match, and
is that a problem?
Yes, because it's the best entrance, not what's the best match following the best entrance. It's what's the best. I'm not even going to argue. Yours is probably the greatest WrestleMania match of all time. 60-minute Iron Man, cool. But the entrance itself is just Shawn Michaels. And you could go, oh, well, what did it do for like entrances going forward? Nobody cares. Christopher Reeve argument again. I don't care what they did for entrances
but all people think of is your entrance. When people think of my entrance, they think of both the entrance and the match because they were both spectacular. They were both spectacular, and that's why
yours is spectacular. Your match is spectacular, which is like, oh yeah, remember that was the match that
the entrance foreshadows the entrance foreshadows the type of match you're going to get. And Shawn Michaels gave an entrance that left everyone in the crowd sitting and waiting in anticipation for something big to happen, and then they got the match that exactly was foreshadowed by the entrance on the zip line. They got a 65-minute match where everyone was just waiting in anticipation.
Exactly. You keep bringing up the match, and the match is not relevant to the conversation.
Because
my match was absolutely terrible. It was a 2-minute squash match for the re-debut of the Dead Man, and it's on the same card as John Cena and Big Show in the greatest triple threat match in the history of the business, and Eddie Guerrero. And the moment at the end, Chris Benoit put that aside, whatever he did in his personal life, that great moment at the end. And then this also sticks out from that WrestleMania 20 card.
But guess what? Because your match was so boring, it makes me forget about the entrance that took place before it. So, and again, my match and my entrance, they're both brilliant. And when you think of one, you think of the other. because I don't think of the match with The Undertaker and Kane because they both have no chemistry.
You think of the Dead Man and the modern Dead Man gimmick of the hat and the duster and the wearing too much eyeliner, whatever. You think of WrestleMania 20. You think of when he comes out, the lights go out, and you just hear Paul Bearer doing the "Oh yes," and it's like that place exploded when you heard Paul Bearer because you knew the Dead Man was back.
I honestly think of the entrance where he introduced the Mohawk more than I do the WrestleMania 20 entrance.
You were the only person that thinks of that. Absolutely only person that thinks of that. My entrance is better. Fuck you, Nico.
Tom, boy, what a great way to close that one out. And first off, I'm going to give a hot take. I think the Iron Man match sucks personally, but that's just my take. I'm not going to factor that into the debate whatsoever. So we're going to go into the closing arguments. Also, I forgot to mention in the first rules, both players have a 1-minute extension that they can use at any point during a pre-argument or a post-argument. We'll put that in now just for the first-time viewers. So, Nico, whenever you're ready, your final 60-second closing argument will begin whenever you're ready.
Again, I don't think talking about the match should disqualify the entrance. If they're both good, then that means that they make each other great. When you think of Shawn Michaels on that zipline, you think of the Iron Man match and vice versa. I don't like to think of Undertaker versus Kane. I never think about Undertaker versus Kane because they have terrible chemistry with one another. And because of that, I kind of forgot that entrance where he had the reject Sith Lords escorting him to the ring and, fire behind him. Whoop-de-dinkle-doo. I don't think about it. So, and the fact that several sources, whether it be WWE or independent sources themselves, rank my entrance higher than Jim's on their lists, even one ranking mine at number 1 is saying something. It shows how impactful that entrance was, how memorable it was, how exciting it was, and it helps add to the story of the match that would follow it. So Shawn Michaels on the zipline, it is the best WrestleMania entrance of all time.
All right. He had 2 extra seconds to spare, but chose not to use them. We'll see if that comes back to backfire. Jim, whenever you're ready, your 60 seconds will start.
Yet again, in Nico's closing statement, just like throughout the entirety of the open debate round, Nico wanted to focus on what others ranked it, others ranking makes it good, and the match that follows makes it good. He didn't tell you specifically why the entrance itself was good, just that because the match was good and people were on their feet for it, made it good. I presented the argument of why the re-debut / debut of the new Deadman character, which lasted another 18 years at WrestleMania 20, is a better entrance than the Shawn Michaels entrance at WrestleMania 12. Because I involved what story led up to it, and the fact that it did have more to it, and that you think of more of the entrance than the match, whereas Nico just continuously told you about how great the Iron Man match was. I will concede my 2 seconds as well, JTH. Thank you.
All right, so it's a level playing field here. I like that both guys are playing fair. So this is a very close back and forth debate, but we're going to start with Malcolm. Malcolm, where do you side on this argument?
Yeah, this was tough, but I mean, it was definitely a close match. But I'm going to have to side with Jim very slightly on this because Nico would bring up some points, like he brought up the facts and the match and all that, but Jim managed to counter all those and brought up enough about why his entrance is better and more interesting than what Nico did. But yeah, they both fought well. So
all right, so one part of the argument goes to Jim. Let's go to Ryan, our next guest judge. Where do you stand on this one?
I'm slightly opposite on Malcolm's argument. To me, this wasn't much of a close match. It started to sway a little bit more towards Jim, and he's getting my point. I do appreciate, and Nico bringing up the stats did help his argument there. But when Jim was mainly focusing on the entrance alone, and he did kind of cripple Nico there by calling out Nico's strategy, saying he's going to connect the entrance to the match. And the question is, who had the best WrestleMania entrance? And yeah, Jim just stayed more focused on target, and Nico did swing back, but Jim just kept batting him. He just kept batting him down.
That's so that's 1 point for Jim. I think it was a very close debated argument there. So both players have shown that they are really bringing the fire in this one. So Jim is up 1-0. So it's no knockout for Nico. I'm sorry, Nico, there. So hope you are planning on going the distance. But we're going to see if you can come back. This was Nico's selected category of strength of choice, and he chose to go to the wonderful wrestling organization of New Japan Pro Wrestling, and they had a pretty monumental event recently, and the G1 Climax 29, I believe, in 2019. So we're going to ask, what is the best match of the G1 Climax? Again, because this was Nico's selected category, we're going to start with Jim to find out what selection he has made.
New Japan Pro Wrestling kicked off the G1 in the United States for the first time ever in Dallas, Texas, and I was in the building. And as not someone that is a big fan of New Japan Pro Wrestling, but keeps up with it, I loved every match that was on there, and there was a specific match that everyone loved, and that was Tanahashi versus Okada in the main event, and that is not my pick. The pick I am picking was the match that I thought was way better, was Kenta versus Kota Ibushi, and that was the match right before it. I think that this match had better story to it, and it had the benefit of not having the Rainmaker in it, because the Rainmaker is incredible. He is a great performer, but I think every match that has the Rainmaker in it has this like luster of, oh, it's an Okada match. This was Kenta. This was Kota Ibushi, the eventual winner, and I think that making Ibushi lose the first night built towards his redemption story that eventually led to him winning the G1 Climax. I will give you the rest of my time, Mr. Hastings.
All right. And you can just call me Mr. JTH. That's quite all right. I'll give you permission on that. So, Nico, who do you have as your selection to counter Jim's?
So I'm going with Kazuchika Okada, the reigning heavyweight champion, taking on Sonata at night 13 in the Osaka Gymnasium. Because the G1 Climax is round-robin format, two things are important in the grand scheme of things. How many wins you can get and who you get those wins against. That second part is even matters a lot more, even if you're mathematically eliminated from the tournament. And in this case, Sonata was mathematically eliminated from the tournament. And the stakes kept piling up. Okada was literally one win away from pretty much shutting almost the entirety of the A block down. And that included Sonata's tag team partner, Evil, who was still in the running and needed Sonata to win to keep his journey going for another couple days. And also, Sonata had never beaten Okada in the 6 times they had faced prior. So all the pressure was on Sonata to do well. And this match went back and forth, showing a lot of long-term continuity, countering to show that they know each other from having wrestled as much as they have. And there was a slugfest 20 minutes in with 10 minutes to go. Sonata was able to put Okada to sleep, goes for a moonsault, then fails at the end, and then Okada goes for some big moves of his own. Sonata counters, gets that moonsault twice. 1, 2, 3. He finally gets that big win over Okada, securing himself a title shot after the tournament ends, which still hasn't happened yet, but he will get it soon, and keeps the A block alive.
All right, so Nico chose to use his full 90 seconds there. We'll see if that works to his advantage. Whenever both players are ready, your 5-minute debate period will begin.
You didn't even pick the best match of night 1. The best match of night 1 was Will Ospreay versus Lance Archer.
Oh, it definitely was not. The only thing about that, we're not even talking about that match.
Are you not going to counter the point?
No, because that's not my point. My point is not that Ospreay versus.
But if I call out your match, then you should counter that point.
I'm working on countering that point. My match is actually the best match of night 1. It has the most kind of question marks going into it because Kenta, who we all know went to NXT and unfortunately, he just kept he got pushed, injured. So there was this whole questioning idea of whether or not Kenta could come back to New Japan and put on a great performance.
He'd never been in New Japan before. He was a Pro Wrestling Noah guy. This was his first run in New Japan, so you don't know the lore of Kenta's journey in Japan. Secondly,
that makes my point even better, that he is coming off of being injured in NXT constantly and making his.
Secondly, everyone knew Kenta was going to be fine. Nobody knew
Kenta was going to be fine. Kenta had constantly gotten injured. He tore his bicep or something when Triple H goes to push him to the NXT title, and then he comes back and then he tears his ACL or something. So he's coming off 2 major injuries, and then he debuts in New Japan against Kota Ibushi, who same thing.
He had plenty of time off, so he had plenty of time to recover. So the injury factor doesn't really mean much.
In the NXT before the first injury,
then he went to 205 Live and he wrestled until the end of his contract. So the injury point is null and void.
From 205 Live, meandering on 205 Live, which Kota Ibushi was in the tournament, who loses to TJP. So, but you bring them back over. Debut and
by the way, your match is very one-sided. Like, Kenta controlled that match for pretty much 90% of the time. Kota Ibushi got his ass kicked for a good portion of that match. Meanwhile, my match was very back and forth. Okada gets a little momentum, then Sonata comes back, gets some momentum of his own. Then Okada comes back, gets some more momentum. It kept shifting back and forth to the point that you were wondering, were they going to give Sonata the win, or were they going to shut that shit down in the A block and pretty much guarantee Okada would win the whole thing?
The John Cena of Japan. So you have to make every match like back and forth, just like the main event was with Tanahashi at night 1.
By the way,
you have to give it's just like every single John Cena match from peak John Cena, to where you have to give everyone
except Kazuchika Okada is 10 times better than John Cena.
We're not debating that. We're debating the fact that the same thing happens in their matches, to where peak Okada, peak John Cena, you have to give everyone this by the way,
my match had tons more storylines. By the way, I mentioned Sonata wanting to get that first win over Okada after losing 6 times. Jim, you've lost to me so many damn times. I saw the look on your face when you finally beat me in a match. You were smiling like you had just won the lottery. Secondly, there was Okada's quest to become the first reigning heavyweight champion to win the G1 Climax in decades. Thirdly, there was the curse of the Osaka Gymnasium and how every G1 it's been unkind to the reigning heavyweight champion, and lo and behold, it reigns its ugly head yet again, costing Okada in this particular match. And let's see here.
While you're looking for more points, I will reestablish my point that you kind of were cutting off. My point of John Cena versus Okada in their peaks is that you have to artificially just give the opponent like all this offense. You go offense. Okay, yeah, they get a bunch of offense because at the end, it's just he's gonna whip out the AA. He's gonna whip out the fucking Rainmaker.
Except Okada never hit the Rainmaker. He hit a couple regular clotheslines, but he never hit the Rainmaker.
He doesn't even hit the Rainmaker.
They were telling a story. They were telling a story of
Rainmaker that he could after he buries Ibushi, and then
they were telling a story. They were telling a story of Sonata learning from his past matches with Okada and being able to properly counter the Rainmaker every time Okada actually attempted it. And by the way, you mentioned the Kota Ibushi's run back into grace after losing that first match. Kota Ibushi doesn't win the tournament if Sonata doesn't beat Okada in this match, because had everything played out the way it did after this match, but Okada had won the match against Sonata, then Kota Ibushi wouldn't have been able to make any ground up in points to actually win the tournament.
That's not relevant. That's not relevant at this time, because Kota Ibushi did win, which is what helps my story setting up towards the end of the G1 Climax.
All right, so that was a very heated debate. I'm actually kind of surprised how heated both guys got. But we're going to go to the closing arguments. We're going to start with Jim. Your 60 seconds for your closing argument will begin when you start speaking.
I think the only good point that Nico makes is that they built on the story that that Sanada and Okada had faced off 6 times before, and that Sanada had kind of learned about avoiding the Rainmaker. But whether or not he hits it, but they still just protected the Rainmaker move so that he can hit it on whoever. He can hit it on Sanada again next time and just beat him. My match had Ibushi doing the same thing about avoiding the GTS, which Kenta went for many times. And then when Kenta actually hits it, Ibushi loses, and then it begins the storyline of building Ibushi from kind of like won't stop until he reaches the peak of being G1 Climax champion. Also, he got injured. He had an ankle injury that match, which he fought through to keep going and have a great match with Kenta. And also, this is the beginning. This also starts the beginning of Kenta is a badass and slowly building up to where he joins the Bullet Club at the end of the G1 Climax. I will give you my 2 seconds yet again, JTH.
The 2-second tradition. It's like the Masters, a tradition like any other. So, Nico, whenever you're ready.
Where's my green jacket? Where's my green jacket?
I left it in my closet. Nico, whenever you're ready.
Jim never countered my point about Will Ospreay and Lance Archer being the better match of night 1, so judges keep that in mind. Also, you mentioned Kota trying to avoid the GTS. The match your match finishes on a GTS that was botched, because I distinctly remember Kenta did not hit the knee on Kota Ibushi's face. He hit him in the right pectoral. So that is a big notch against your match and takes a lot of the wind out of its sails. Again, my match was a great match on its own, and then you factor in the storylines behind it, everything going on with Okada trying to make history, the history of the Osaka Gym, the history between Okada and Sonata trying to finally get that first win over his longtime rival, trying to earn the respect of Okada in the process, and also keeping his teammate Evil alive in the tournament for a little bit longer. Again, if my match doesn't happen the way it happens, then Ibushi never actually wins the tournament, and Sonata was able to secure a title shot down the road because of the fact that he beat the reigning champ.
Shame on you, Nico. You didn't use the 2 seconds for cushion, so I'll have to dock your points for that.
Automatic point to Jim. Didn't use 2 seconds.
That's not what I said, Jim. Point deduction for you too. We're back at 0. So, so very heated, very back and forth. But it's time to find out what the judges think. We're going to find out if the judges took into account what Nico had told them to take into account.
Didn't happen. I'm joking.
Ryan, where do you stand on this?
In the last round, in my mind, it was more of an one-sided battle, and that hasn't changed here, except this time it's not towards Jim, it's more towards Nico. Nico had the upper hand in this match. I mean, he gave out more. He not only talking about storylines, he talked about other matches in the G1, the Archer and Ospreay match, but also he did take down in this closing the Kenta and Ibushi match, and he did talk about how the Sonata and Okada match had further storyline implications outside of the G1. Sonata beating him, securing a title shot. So it was just those extra added elements, and also Jim his constant attacks did hinder him a little bit to where he recovered in the closing, but Nico stayed on point. So I'm going to give my point to Nico.
Yeah, I'm going to have to agree. I think Nico really chose his category wisely for his category genre of strength. It just seemed like he really knew what points to bring up. He knew where to counter Jim's argument on what the match quality and the ending and all that. So Nico really started out strong. He countered every argument that Jim needed to make, and I think he kind of ran away and took that one in the distance. So I'm going to give Nico the point. So we're tied up at 1-1, although if you count my point deductions for each player, we're back at 0-0. So 1-1-0-0, whichever you choose to make. Let's go to the third question, which was another one of Jim's selections, and he chose the WWE. So the question that we chose for this is a pretty interesting one because you can kind of go a bunch of different ways on this. The question that we asked is, who is the most underutilized superstar from either Raw or SmackDown currently? There's some interesting picks that we could make here. So obviously, because Jim's chose this category, we're going to start with Nico again. Nico, who is your choice for this question?
So Luke Harper has been somebody I believe could have taken over the Undertaker's mantle of being the WWE's super agile big guy. The problem is he hasn't gotten the proper chances to actually show it. Up until this past week with Clash of Champions and then later on SmackDown, Harper had only had 4 matches since being cleared from injury in February. The first was a house show in March. The second was Worlds Collide against Dominic Dakota, however you pronounce his name, at WrestleMania Access. The third was the Andre the Giant Battle Royal. And the fourth was a SmackDown Dark match versus EC3, which apparently Vince McMahon did not like, so much so that he pretty much canceled anything he had planned for Luke Harper creatively, which included a rivalry with Sami Zayn. Since then, Harper had been trying to get released from his contract and instead Vince basically said, nope, I'm keeping you on for an extra 6 months because of all the time you spent injured. And the fact that he popped up on TV at all this week was a big surprise, but will it come of anything? Will this new angle with him and Rowan and Daniel Bryan and Roman Reigns actually come of anything? Because we've seen before that ever since the Shield versus the Wyatt family had their first 3-on-3, Luke Harper has had gigantic potential to become something in WWE, to become a star. And it feels like every time he's gotten within reach of the ball, something outside of his control has deflated that ball. Jim's pick has at least been able to touch the ball. And I'll go into greater detail as to why that is in the later half of this argument. All
right. So we have Luke Harper on Nico's side. Jim, who do you have to counter?
I will be going with the for my pick as underutilized, keyword underutilized. For this, I will be picking the inaugural Andre the Giant Battle Royal. Yeah, he indeed was. You didn't know that because they didn't do anything with it. Andre the Giant Memorial Battle Royal champion at WrestleMania 30. Antonio Cesaro. I'm sorry, forget the Antonio part because Cesaro for whatever reasons. He has been a tag team champion with Sheamus the Bar. He's been floating around doing that for the past 2 years instead of being pushed as a singles competitor, which he naturally is and he naturally excels at, given his matches, his classic NXT match with Sami Zayn, and then his constantly getting different kind of moves over like uppercuts and Swiss swings. So yeah, my pick is in not Antonio. Cesaro is Cesaro. My pick is Cesaro.
All right. So we have Antonio Cesaro versus Luke Harper. Honestly, I would think these are the 2 top picks that anybody would make if you were to ask anybody. So going to be interested to see what arguments are brought up here. So the 5 minutes will begin when the first person begins speaking.
Keyword is underutilized, and I did some research.
Keyword is underutilized.
Number of WrestleMania matches between these two guys. Cesaro had 7, Harper had 4. Number of SummerSlam matches, Cesaro has 5, Harper only has 2. Number of matches at the Royal Rumble, Cesaro has 10, Harper has 4. Number of Royal Rumble appearances, Cesaro has 5, Harper has 4. Number of Survivor Series.
Who's been in the least amount of pay-per-view matches all in their entirety of the career.
Keyword is underutilized. And here's the stats I picked. The stats I picked are the big matches.
Currently is the key word. Luke, what happened on Sunday, Clash of Champions? Oh, right. Luke Harper was just put into an angle with the tag team partner that everyone has wanted him to be together with. In an angle against who? Oh, Vince's golden boy, Roman Reigns. Luke Harper has just now been pushed into the main event, and then most of the part. And
Has he though? How do we know he's not just going to get buried?
It's against Roman Reigns. If you're in it's like Prime. Let's bring back Prime John Cena and Prime Okada, which is right now. If you're in matches with them, if you're in matches with peak Roman Reigns, that is main event status.
And he's getting used, but that doesn't mean he's getting used.
Underutilized. You even
and for the majority of this year, he hasn't been on TV. He's only had literally.
He got injured forever. So and again, anytime
and then he got taken off injury, and he only made appearances in 4 matches, and he hasn't been seen since. He was asking for his release because he was so pissed off at how underutilized he actually was. And
beginning of the year or currently when he's in a
he's still complaining about like not getting a t-shirt when all the other NXT guys are getting t-shirts. So he's basically just on TV right now because he's trying to avoid the Neville treatment. He's trying to avoid the Neville treatment of having his contract frozen out. And he's just like, okay, I'll play ball with you for the remainder of my contract, and then I'm gone because I'm sick of the fact that you kept me on the shelf for so damn long doing nothing. And again, the stats show that he was doing less than Cesaro in the amount of matches that he was in and whatnot.
For a stretch of your irrelevant numbers that do not matter, because the key word other than underutilized is currently. Cesaro is just chilling on dark match on Raw.
Cesaro makes regular appearances on Up, Up, Down, Down. He's on Ride Along every week. He's been in Table of 3 multiple times. He does WWE tap out ads. So
that does not matter. That does not matter. The key, okay, let me repeat the question for you, Nico, because you didn't hear it. The most underutilized star currently on SmackDown and Raw, not who's in less ads and
Cesaro has been making appearances on Raw and SmackDown regularly every month for the past several months, every week for the past several weeks. Cesaro is appearing on TV. This was your first
underutilized. Just because you are utilized does not mean you are perfectly utilized. He was in the King of
the Ring. He was in the King of the Ring. He was in an angle with Aleister Black.
He lost in the first round. He's been just around losing every single match that he's in, whether it's a dark match or if it's on main event or whatever. And then go back to your numbers of, but look at these pay-per-view matches he was in because he was in a tag team. The man won. Oh, and if you want to go back to the past. Yeah, let's go back to the past. WrestleMania 30. We all know the 10s are the biggest pay-per-views. This is the same WrestleMania where Daniel Bryan achieves his ultimate dream and he wins both championships. Oh, what also happened on that? Antonio Cesaro wins the inaugural Andre the Giant Battle Royal.
Can
and then
Luke Harper say that he has won the Andre the Giant Battle Royal? No, Luke Harper hasn't. So they did something with Cesaro, and Cesaro had a longer reign with it.
It's better to just not. I mean,
Harper had 240 days with the U.S. title. Harper only had 27 days with the
that's like 5 years ago. But keep bringing up the past to make your statement make your argument for currently.
They do utilize him. They do utilize him sometimes to his full potential. Sometimes not to his full potential. Utilized to his full potential. Do you know when
your superstar had not been utilized? So he's just been on the sideline, and now he's in the main event picture. But Cesaro is underutilized because he's utilized under what he should be. He is obviously an incredible singles competitor.
When you're complaining about not getting TV angles and when you're complaining about not getting TV time and trying to get out of your contract, that means you feel like you're being underutilized, and that
just means you don't like whatever. That has nothing to do with the word underutilized. Cesaro is being utilized, but he's being underutilized.
This is going to be interesting because most of that debate period kind of sounded like John Madden speaking. So these closing arguments are going to be really important based on the very heated banter that we got yet again. Really liking the back and forth that most of these players are giving. They're really showing that they want it. But Nico, whenever you're ready, this closing 60 seconds, if you choose to make it be 60 seconds, is
time.
Alrighty. So whenever you're ready, that time will begin.
Again, keyword is underutilized, and recent or current can be subjective. It depends on how much of a time frame you want to give. And in which case, Cesaro has had more opportunities on the Big Four pay-per-views. He's been in bigger stipulation matches. He's had lengthier title reigns, and he's had more title reigns than Harper. He got to win the Andre the Giant Memorial Battle Royal. He's been in all of WWE's YouTube network and tap-out content, helping them promote all that stuff. You give Cesaro a job, he does it to the best of his ability. He's being utilized to the fullest extent of his ability. Luke Harper was lucky enough to get on the WWE What's in a Name thing they did on YouTube, if that's what it's even called. And the main times Harper should have been utilized, he was not, especially if you go back to all the way for the WrestleMania 33 angle with Randy Orton and Bray Wyatt. There was a lot of potential for Luke Harper to be involved in that rivalry, give him the win over AJ Styles, and make that match at WrestleMania 3-way, because Randy Orton, for some reason, can't do Mania main event matches for the WWE title without it being super slow and plotting. And we got bug projections. Imagine if Harper was in that match and they gave him the proper buildup towards that match. He would have really increased the pace and made that match memorable. And the fact that they haven't done anything with him then. Bludgeon Brothers, they gave him a 5-minute match at WrestleMania last year when it should have been a ladder match, in my opinion. The opportunity has been there to give Luke Harper so many things to do, and he has just not been given them, and it's bothered him to the point that he's just been trying to get out of his contract, and Vince was like, nope, I'm just going to give you the Neville treatment and extend it to spite you. And Harper realizes the only way he can actually get out of that contract is if he plays ball, and it's sad. Cesaro is not complaining about that because he's comfortable with his position in WWE because he's being utilized to the fullest of his extent.
And that's time. So, Jim, whenever you're ready, of course, if you wish to use your minute extension as well, you can.
I indeed will be.
All right. So your 2 minutes will begin when you start speaking.
Again, Nico does not understand what currently means. Currently, Luke Harper is in a main event feud as with a tag team partner. But that is not what being underutilized is. He is currently in a main event picture. And nobody in a main event picture is underutilized. Cesaro, who Nico wants to boast about having all these matches and blah, 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 blah. I'm pretty sure he has not won a singles match at a big pay-per-view since he won the Andre the Giant Memorial Battle Royal. Maybe. I went back to like 2014 and couldn't find one. So that is what the part of being underutilized is. This man wins the Andre the Giant Memorial Battle Royal. It is poised to be a bit, and then he just gets put in a tag team with Sheamus, and then they are like messing around with New Day and all this other stuff. The key word is underutilized. Cesaro has shown consistently that as recently as NXT Cardiff, but that does not apply to SmackDown and Raw underutilization, that he can just have fantastic, amazing matches as a singles competitor. And then Vince continuously just puts him in tag teams or makes him lose to Miz constantly. And another part of the underutilization is the brand new coming to Fox SmackDown poster that has every major star in the business, The Fiend, AJ Styles, Daniel Bryan, Roman Reigns. Cesaro is on it. And then Cesaro, while on this poster, is the only one of them just losing random matches to Miz and losing dark matches and all this other stuff. The key word is underutilized. And currently, those are the two key words. And currently, Nico's guy who disgruntled, yes, whatever, that does not apply to being underutilized, him not liking the direction that WWE is taking him. The main thing of being underutilized is having opportunities and then just being buried constantly as a singles competitor. Luke Harper's in a main event. You can't be underutilized when you're in a main event.
Time. All right. I'm not going to lie. This is very, very close. Both of you gave excellent arguments on both. Both counter arguments were spot on. Ultimately, it came down to the closing arguments, and it's a good thing that both of you used your 2 minutes because I think both of you really need to use them to try and counter every little fact that the other threw at. Ultimately, when it came down to it at the very end, Jim kept bringing up the fact of the main event picture with Roman Reigns. It's kind of hard to ignore that. And obviously, the one thing that does kind of hurt this is the fact that we asked this question to both these guys before Luke Harper came back, which that obviously didn't help Nico in the grand scheme of things because Jim ultimately used that, which definitely put Nico in a hole, and he definitely had something extra that he wasn't expecting to have to fight in this argument. The fact that Jim was able to use it, and I think executed it pretty well, I'm going to slightly give the edge to Jim, but it was really, really close. So I'm going slightly to Jim. Let's go to Malcolm. Malcolm, where do you side on this?
Yeah, this was tough because Sadly, I lost a lot in the main round because they were talking over each other. So what I could got from there was a lot of conflicting definitions to underutilization, which but I'm actually going to go slightly the other way. I think Nico has had this because I think like what he was sort of saying about that Luke's been trying to get out of his contract and that Cesaro apparently is comfortable where he is and he's getting more time on screen, and which Nico did, which Jim kind of countered by saying that that doesn't necessarily mean he's being utilized correctly, but he's still being utilized. So that because of Nico's points, I'm going to go slightly to Nico.
I can completely understand that. Obviously, it was very back and forth, so it didn't surprise me that we were going to have a split decision here. So, Ryan's going to come down to you. Where do you stand on this?
Yeah, the constant talking over each other between Jim and Nico. I mean, the passion these guys had for their subject is good. Question was fine. It really made it difficult, and I even had to look up the definitions for currently and underutilized, and it was always around the same. It was always around the same meanings, either at the current, during the present, nowadays. It would always switch back. So the closing argument started to form in my mind, and I also looked at the opening too, but I'm dragging this out, and I don't want to drag this out. So Jim really did hurt Nico by saying that how Cesaro Nico. Oh, damn. Oh, God. I mean, Nico laid it heavily on thick why Harper is underutilized, how every opportunity that's been brought to him, something out of his control has taken away. And he spoke more positives on Cesaro on why Jim did a great job using those positives into why Cesaro is not on a great track right now. Ooh, man. Jim definitely did hit a couple of dings on Nico, talking about his current how he's currently utilized in this Roman and Daniel Bryan storyline. Personally, for me, it's mainly Roman. It's mainly Rowan who's getting most of the focus. But personally aside, God, just looking at the situation, Nico just had a lot more to say, and I'm giving the point to Nico.
Yes.
You still got a chance to come back in this final question, and it's going to be a very big one. Obviously, if Nico gets this right, he will win the match. And obviously, he's got a big advantage because, again, he got to choose the category for this final question, and he went to the AEW. And obviously, they're making a lot of noise. Got a new champion. They got Y2J, Mr. Listman, as the top dog. And we're about to crown some tag team champions there. Obviously, they're in the middle of a little bit of a tournament right now, so it kind of has some dwindled options here. But we wanted to ask both of our competitors who should be the inaugural AEW tag champions. So again, because this was Nico's category of choice, we're going to start with Jim. Jim, whenever you're ready, what is your selection?
I'm going with the hottest team in tag team wrestling today. They were the hottest free agents in tag team wrestling in recent memory, at least, because everyone thought they could go to ROH, NXT, main roster, WWE, AEW, and or stay in Impact. No, they can't. But it's LAX. And LAX, they recently debuted LAX at AEW. On AEW, it was All Out or whatever the fuck it was, this past one, in Chicago, and it was a huge moment for that tag team division with LAX laying everyone out. So you already are bringing them in and showing them as a big dominant team, which is what you usually want to do with hot free agents like that. So that is why my selection is going to be LAX. Tournament aside, I'll address it later.
All right, so we have LAX for Jim. Nico, who is your selection?
Since arriving in AEW, the Jurassic Express, more specifically Luchasaurus and Jungle Boy, have been one of the most over acts in the company. They have a great gimmick that mixes elements of old school and new school character work. They have brilliant movesets as individuals and as a team. Luchasaurus and Jungle Boy both have heart-tugging stories outside of wrestling kayfabe that make the fans really connect to them. They're a great act. Despite that, however, despite how great they are, they haven't gotten any wins yet in AEW, which is a company that prides itself on wins and losses mattering in regards to the booking. That said, everyone loves a comeback story. And the way the tournament bracket was introduced to us this week, the Jurassic Express pathway to the inaugural championships could potentially be one of the best comeback stories told in wrestling today. So my pick is the Jurassic Express, and I'll get into why in just a moment.
All right, so we have LAX, Jurassic Express. Going to be a good, interesting debate, I'm sure. The 5 minutes will begin when the first person begins speaking.
Go ahead, Nico.
Now, I want to hear what your address will be as to, like, obviously we picked our picks before the tournament bracket was announced. Your guys aren't in the tournament, so I just kind of want to hear how you're going to save yourself here.
I don't need to save myself because multiple times throughout mostly WWE, but there's times that people have done it in the past. You have a heel team show up and heel whatever, wreck shop on everybody, and then take whoever spot. I believe it's been done a lot of times with the Elimination Chamber, other times throughout King of the Rings and tournaments. You have this team that you just debuted as a dominant team, and then they gave a team a bye, so there's a spot that you could just slide them in there, or you could just have them take out Best Friends, or you could even do this. You can have them take out Jurassic Express and then take Jurassic Express's spot in it, because when you do that, you are building up Jurassic Express as an underdog even more. The question is not who should be.
What you just mentioned is everything WWE would do, and this is AEW who are trying to.
AEW has librarians going.
They're trying to distance themselves from WWE, and while some of their antics might be a little ridiculous, there's also a lot of brilliance in there as well.
They just did a classic WWE new insert X debuting person that was a free agent, takes out everybody in whatever.
Let's hammer on the fact that you have one of those insert name here debuting hot stars from other companies. LAX is a great act in the ring, but Conan is what gave their characters life in the backstage stuff. And Conan, as far as I know, isn't with AEW. Might be later on, but we don't know yet. And in regards to the comeback story of the Jurassic Express, their journey to the titles starts with a match versus the Lucha Brothers, then potentially continues into the semis versus the Young Bucks if they get past Private Party, which they probably will, and then Dark Order in the finals. Those are the three most dominant, three most winningest tag teams in AEW right now.
But again,
imagine how big the pop would be if Jurassic Express beat all three.
And imagine how big of a pop it would be if Hangman. Imagine how big of a pop it would be if Hangman Page beats Chris Jericho, but he didn't. That's why there is more money. There's more money in the chase than there is there is a face being the champion. I'm not disagreeing with you. Jurassic Express is a great
world title on Chris Jericho. It was to put the company in a safe spot where they could push other indie darlings in the other title pictures, in the women's title picture, and in the tag team title picture. So that's why Chris Jericho, so that there's a
Jurassic Express.
Other teams.
Jurassic Express has a great story, yes, but this is specifically who should be the first AEW tag team champion.
When you're over the moon like Jurassic Express is, you should get
LAX's that everyone was foaming at the mouth, hoping, and if they go to AEW, and they did, and then they showed up and took out everyone, including the Lucha Bros, including the Young Bucks, including everybody that was there. And then this is for who should be the first champions. LAX has the momentum coming from being new signings. Jurassic Express's story and Jurassic Express being the champions is better served them losing in the tournament. So like you mentioned earlier with Sanada, the juice of the berry becomes sweeter when they lose.
You know what's terrible? To insert someone that wasn't even in the bracket and just have them They did that with Undisputed Era for the Dusty Rhodes Classic. They inserted this random team in at the last minute, and then they ended up winning the whole thing without even having to compete in more than one match. And AEW is trying to distance themselves from NXT booking, from WWE booking, and that's a very WWE move to put LAX.
They're trying to make it more about like wins and losses. They're trying to make it more about wins and losses and everything. And just because you say, "Oh, they're trying to distance themselves from WWE booking or whatever," they already did the WWE booking with LAX. So that like your argument of they're distancing themselves from WWE booking is null and void because they already debuted LAX with WWE style booking. And just because they're not in
they didn't put them in the tournament. They didn't reward them for jumping anyone.
Because that's why you do it later. You can even, I think, a better idea
do it later.
the redemption story of a Jurassic Express is you have LAX come and take out Jurassic Express and take their spot. Because Jurassic Express, you don't just immediately go, this team is over, and you just push them to the moon.
I feel like your team is actually going to help my team win the belts in real life, because who did LAX debut against? They jumped Lucha Brothers and they jumped the Young Bucks. Who's in the tournament?
Exactly.
They're going to jump those guys. And they're going to help. They're going to help Jurassic Express win the tournament. They're going to help Jurassic Express in the tournament.
All right. Yet again, another very heated debate. It just seems like it's just meant to be. These guys just love arguing with each other. So we're going to go to the closing arguments. Obviously, don't need to heighten or express that this is very important. So, Jim, whenever you're ready, your final 60 seconds will begin when you begin speaking.
Nico continues to just bring home AEW doesn't want to do WWE style booking while they do WWE style booking. Whatever. That's not the point. Jurassic Express, this is for who should be the first AEW tag team champions. There is always more money in having the dastardly bad heel teams beat and screw over your faces that you eventually want to build into megastars to then. And Nico is mentioning that Jurassic Park is over now. Yes, they are. You don't need to immediately push them to win the titles just because they're over right now. You make them more over, and you get them more attention and and then more money from them winning the titles if you have them get screwed over by LAX or whoever. And then, yes, Jack Perry, his father dies outside. So everyone loves Jack Perry, Jungle Boy right now. But that you give that more time to ruminate. So then you have LAX take them out, and then they become more underdogs. So when that underdog climbs up the mountain like Daniel Bryan did at WrestleMania 30, that berry juice is so much sweeter. I am not giving you 2 seconds, JTH.
Damn. Oh, well, it's always next year. Nico, whenever you're ready, you can begin.
We're already having the chase angle with Jericho and Hangman, so why repeat it in the tag team division? Yeah, you need a little variety depending on the title picture. Secondly, you want to talk about marketability? Imagine how great it would be if you had your champs being Luchasaurus and Jungle Boy. You could sell Luchasaurus masks and Jungle Boy loincloths like Rey Mysterio masks. They would sell gangbusters. Thirdly, LAX, we've kind of seen their style before. They have a lucha brawling mixture that kind of reminds me of Unico. Whereas with Jungle Boy and Luchasaurus, great movesets on their own, crazy things. Like Luchasaurus, he's a gigantic man who can do tiny man things, and it's crazy. And then you put Jungle Boy on top of his shoulders, and you get some great double team work. And finally, storyline stuff. LAX hasn't been involved in great storylines, whereas Luchasaurus, when he was Vibora in Lucha Underground, he got fucking decapitated after a gang tribe war with the Rabbit Tribe. Like, that's baller right there. He can do anything you put him in.
All right. So that's going to do it. The 4 main rounds have been finished. So far, this has been a great match. Let me just say that right now. And I hope both of our judges agree with this. But ultimately, we're going to find out if we're going to go to speed round or if we have a winner. We're going to start with Malcolm. Who do you side with this debate?
As someone who has no idea who these teams are, I was looking for who could sell me on which one would be a good inaugural. And I'm going to have to say, I think the way Nico was sort of selling Jurassic Park or Lucha.
Jurassic Express, please.
It's
get that
Jurassic
name.
Express. All right.
I knew it was Jurassic something, but I bought into that because, like, with a lot of the things, you're going to want to have marketable stars. So my point goes to Nico.
All right, so Malcolm sides with the dinosaur people, also known as Jurassic Express. We're going to go to Ryan next. Do you agree with Malcolm's verdict?
Well, God, as someone who is familiar with both of these teams, it is. It was more my judgment my point had to fall on who was able to do a better, like, pitch a better story on why these two should be the first team champions. And honestly, both Jim and Nico gave good points. They touched on marketing, they touched on just storytelling, and God, it's just like the last round. It's going back and forth. But Jim did give a solid story on how LAX can be incorporated into this team tournament, even though, they were like recently late additions because make their debut at All Out. But Nico did counter with the fact that not only are they over, he talked about the other ways they can be marketed, the Luchasaurus Max, the Jungle Boy loincloths. But Jim did say you can make them even megastars if you give them something to go against as bigger underdogs, which is against a heel team. And in that way, to have a combination like Jurassic Express to get over that big, I leaned a little more towards Jim in that moment, because when you had, because you mentioned with Daniel Bryan, he got over huge by having this huge mountain of heels. And I think it would work to Jurassic Express benefit. So he edges out just by this much. Jim edges out, so he gets my point.
All right, so it comes down to me, and I was very torn. I was very back and forth with both of these teams. I did like the fact, though, that Jim, right off the bat, he made very clear that he was talking about who should, not exactly who will. And there were times where I thought Nico did kind of start going into who will win as opposed to who should. Jim was very stand pat on that. When ultimately it came down to me, I think in the grand scheme, I think the better pitch, and I think I got to agree with a little bit with Ryan on this, it came down to the storyline when he basically said that the heel kind of does sometimes make the better story. And it was a very, very close argument, but I think I have to give it just slightly to Jim. So after the 4 main round questions, we are tied. We are going to a final tiebreaker speed round. Basically, this is how it's going to go. For those that have not seen, we're going to have 3 separate stints. I'm going to ask one question. Whenever someone thinks they have what they believe is the right answer, they will speak. The first person that speaks will get 3. We'll get 1. We will alternate between 3 separate debating periods. Each one will last 30 seconds, 30 seconds, and then 20 seconds. That's how we're going to do it. So we'll go 30 seconds for one, 30 seconds another. We'll do that again, and then a final 20 seconds for each one. So 3 separate debating periods. So do both of the players understand the rules? All right. So I'm going to keep this one pretty straightforward. I'm going to name 2 different tag teams. Each of you will say which one you think is the better tag team between the 2. Are you ready?
Mm-hmm.
The Hardy Boys or Edge and Christian?
Edge and Christian.
All right. Jim with Edge and Christian. Your 30 seconds will begin. Tell us why Edge and Christian is the better of the 2 tag teams.
I think Edge and Christian are the better of the 2 tag teams. They did not have as much longevity as the Hardy Boys, being that they both split off and went their own ways in singles. But I think out of the main 3 of the Attitude Era, the Dudleys, Edge and Christian, and the Hardy Boys, Edge and Christian are never looked at as a better tag team than either of those. And that's what makes them even better, because you can go back and watch their stuff and that you're like, okay, Edge and Christian were legitimately great, and they're kind of underrated because everyone always says, oh, Hardy Boys and Dudleys, of course. But Edge and Christian, super underrated, super great.
Time. Nico, whenever you're ready.
Jim mentioned ENC not having as much longevity. The Hardys have had longevity for decades. Like, they can show up in TNA and they'll be big. They can show up at WrestleMania after being gone from the WWE for so damn long and they'll be big. They can go to Ring of Honor and they'll be big. They can go into the Broken Universe and do stuff and they're still big. And the fans have just gravitated towards them for the longest freaking time, and it hasn't stopped. Hardy merch still sells. Edge and Christian, they weren't even real brothers, so that hurts them because that's how their story angle started.
Time. Your next 30 seconds will begin, Jim, whenever you're ready.
I think you can look at two boy bands, the Backstreet Boys and NSYNC, and get information about Edge and Christian versus the Hardy Boys. Just because the Hardy Boys have been around longer and been together longer and put out a bunch more stuff that's just okay, does not mean that they are better. NSYNC had the higher peak, just like Edge and Christian. They were bigger for a shorter amount of time. They hit that higher note for a shorter amount of time, but just because you're longer together doesn't mean you're better. Edge and Christian, and actually Edge and Christian are blood brothers. They are together. They've been together since they were kids.
Nico, whenever you're ready.
The Hardy Boys have been practicing tag team maneuvers since they were children on a trampoline. They got so good at it that they started their own company where they continue to improve their tag team maneuvers as kids into their adulthood, and to the point that they're now teaching their own children how to be great wrestlers. They're giving back to the sport, helping in the fact that they are the better tag team. And they may not have won the tag team titles as much as Edge and Christian, but when they did, whoo boy, the crowd went crazy for them. They have connections with every single fan base they meet.
Time. All right, so now we go to a 20-minute final 20-second closing argument. So Jim, whenever you're ready, your final 20 seconds will begin.
As I said before, Edge and Christian have been together since they were kids. Edge has loved wrestling since he went to the Ultimate Challenge, WrestleMania 6 in Toronto. Edge and Christian produced, once again, using the NSYNC comparison, Edge and Christian gave us Edge, which is one of the best SmackDown superstars of all time. The Hardy Boys, when they went apart, they were Druggy and whoever about Matt Hardy.
Right, the final 20 seconds will begin whenever Nico begins talking.
The fact that they face those personal demons and people still love them should tell you a lot about how popular and how beloved the Hardy Boys are. Their merch, wherever they go, it always sells gangbusters, no matter the time period, no matter the place. They've always kept things fresh and interesting with their characters. And in terms of single stuff, they were both standouts to the point that when they came back as a tag team, they were still as beloved as ever. Edge and Christian, they just didn't go their own ways.
All right, before we let the judges decide who's going to win, I'm going to give both of you guys a round of applause because that was excellent match there. Both of you guys should be very happy with what you came up with. But unfortunately, we do have to crown a winner. Somebody's got to go to the championship match where Richard Schwartz is waiting. We're going to start with Ryan. Ryan, where do you stand on this final question?
Nico gets the point because every round, during each short time, he brought up something different and something new about the Hardys to add to his argument. I do love the pop analogy that Jim laid out, but at the same time, I would have preferred if he had maybe thrown another ding on the Hardys. That was it. Something where Nico couldn't recall. But this is a speed round, so it would have been hard. But Nico he brought more new, interesting facts. He talked about how the Hardys connect to the audience. He sold them why they are so loved. So Nico gets the point.
All right, we're going to go to me next. I really liked the arguments that both players made. Edge and Christian, obviously, is one of my favorite tag teams. So very really liked the lineage that Jim brought up with them, kind of used the comparisons of stuff that I never would have brought up or ever thought of. I liked also the different incarnations that Nico brought up in his with why the Hardys are the better team. Ultimately, when it came down to it, I think I have to agree with Ryan. I think there was a little bit more from Nico, which means ultimately I think I'm going to give the point to Nico here, which means that the winner of this match by a score of 3-2 and going on to the championship match is the Cosmic Night Fury, Nico Suave Regoli. Nico, congratulations on a hard-fought match. That was a lot of fun. Both players should be really proud of how they played. But first off, let's go to our unfortunate loser here. Jim, is there anything you want to say after a heartbreaking loss here?
I want to say, if you want to comment, you can talk to Caleb Coho, my manager. Fuck everybody.
Oh, bye. So, way to end that on a sour note. Oh dear. So, I guess now if Jim wants to hear what Nico has to say, he'll have to wait for this match to drop. What a damn shame. So, Nico, let me first apologize for that having to happen.
It's not the first time he's left a call that I was on, and it probably won't be the last.
Oh, well, since you put it that way, fuck him. So, y'all didn't have to laugh if you didn't want to. So, Nico, that was a very, very hard-fought match. You definitely showed some emotion when the announcement was made. So now you're going on to the championship. Richard Schwartz is now waiting. He now finally knows who his opponent is going to be. What's going through your mind knowing that this is now a reality?
Honestly, I'm still a little shaken up from the speed round question because I was afraid. I worked so hard on the prepared questions because I fear the speed round a little bit. I'm throwing this out there right now. Richard can obviously use this to his advantage, but I'm just letting you know where my head is at. When I don't, I'm like Batman. I do better when I have prep time, and the speed round is basically the entire opposite of that. It's like, here's a question, answer it, do your best with the few seconds that you have to prepare for it. And as soon as I made my final point, I thought to myself, did I make enough dings on Edge and Christian? I hit a lot of points on why the Hardys were great, but I thought to myself, I don't know if I made enough points about Edge and Christian. But the fact that I was able to sway you guys was like a gigantic relief on me. I feel like I lost 5 years of my existence in this match alone because there was just a lot of passion thrown out here. But yeah, this is title shot number 4 for me this year. Title match number 7 in my entire career that I've been in this Schmodown fan community for the past 2 years. And I've only been successful in title matches once. I'm hoping that match number 7 can be championship victory number 2. And Richard, you're probably watching this right now. You're probably using this as prep. You're probably learning the ins and outs of how I debate. And, I've watched you too. I've paid attention to everything you've done. I've paid attention to the way you approach arguments. Obviously, you're more of a casual fan of wrestling than you are a hardcore fan. I'm a hardcore fan, but I obviously can't sleep on the casual guys because they bring some takes that you don't really expect. So I'm coming in ready for this title match. I want that championship, and who would have thought that I'd even make it this far in debates? Because up until this year, I had never won a single debate, whether it was Late Night with Take 3, whether it was Movie Battleground, whether it was a very short-lived debate thing that Hunter tried to do. And now here I am, 2-0, going into the finals of a championship debate tournament. Wow.
Just for shits and giggles, who was that one title match that you won against?
Yes, it was.
Just had to throw that in there. And just to prove everybody, I love taking cheap shots at myself. So that's going to do it for this wonderful edition of Chokeslam Wrestling Debate. Had to make y'all wait a little bit longer, but I'm certainly hoping that it was worth it for everybody here. So let's go to our fortunate winner, because unfortunately we can't get any plugs from our loser because he's talking to the king right now, which I don't think is Elvis. So Nico, where can the good people find you?
Facebook, Twitter, YouTube at Nico Suave Regoli, or just Nico Suave with 4 random meaningless numbers at the end on Discord, Instagram, Snapchat, and LinkedIn. Coming soon, hashtag give Nico a job. Combat Wrestling Trivia on Facebook, Combat Wrestling Network on YouTube. The poorly made Twitter handle is at Combat Wrestling. Wrestling, the number 2. There is no letter G. Excuse me for that. Dedicated to Art on Facebook and YouTube. Check out the Dedicated to Art Facebook group page as well as the business page. At D2A channel on Twitter and Instagram. We do the Who Cares Anyway podcast every Friday night live on YouTube, and then it's available wherever podcasts are available. And we do Schmodown reactions as well, and we have a bunch of new shows coming out once the TV season starts again, and we can do reviews and reactions to those. And of course, hashtag Trivia for Thon 2. We're doing it again. Matches for charity here in the fan leagues, trying to raise money for the Four Diamonds Pediatric Cancer Research Fund in partnership with Penn State Thon. 3 big matches already announced. D2A versus Call to Action in a 3-on-3 in the movie Trivia Face-Off. Malcolm Goldie-Lay has booked a whole bunch of Full Metal random matches, including a 5-way Schmodown Reactors Schmodown Trivia Ironman match. And over at Combat Wrestling Trivia, we're doing a multi-team tag team turmoil gauntlet match to crown the very first team champions. Matthew Rosa and I are going to wreck shop.
Well said. And he kind of brought up Malcolm and everything that he's plugging. So, Malcolm, let's go to you now. Anything that you wish to plug?
You can find me on Tape 3 hosting Rankum every Sunday night. You can also find me hosting Full Metal Random on Tuesdays. And Richard knocked me out of the Chokeslam Tournament, so Nico avenged my loss.
You lost to Harley.
Fuck. I lost to Richard and sub.
he got knocked out so bad he forgot who knocked him out. That's
I'm the one who lost to Richard, the person Nico's making. I'm the one who lost to him.
Speaking of the person that was knocked out by Richard, let's go to our other great judge who is happy to join us here tonight. Ryan, where can the good people find you?
Well, keep your eyes out. I'm entered into the Full Metal Geek tournament. I'll be facing against Tim Pergala. Hopefully that match is going to drop soon.
It has dropped, actually.
It has. Okay, then I should definitely check. You all should definitely check that out. Also, keep your eyes open in Jack of All Trivia. I have a match for the Wrestling Championship on the line. Just waiting to see when I can finally face my opponent. And also check me out on the movie Trivia Face-Off. I have 2 upcoming matches. One in their singles tournament to crown their inaugural singles champion, and I have myself a geek trivia match coming up soon. When they're going to drop, who knows? I mean, at this point, I won't be surprised if they show up by Thanksgiving. And also keep your eyes open for the DC and Star Wars trivia coming up within TMG Entertainment. They'll be dropping out soon. We just did a breakdown of the brackets, who's going to be playing in what division. And if you guys definitely love wrestling, check me out on the Pro Wrestling Broadcast. Right now, we're doing a bit of a break, but just go on the Podbean, check out Pro Wrestling Broadcast, and just see some of our previous episodes. We talked about John Moxley's interview. We talked about Double or Nothing. We talked about WWE pay-per-views. Hopefully soon we'll be branching out more to talk about Impact and maybe some New Japan in the future. And as always, please keep your minds open when it comes to debate, because I'm looking forward to bring myself back in to have some more debate matches.
All right. Well said. And you can find me on Facebook, Jeremy Hastings. I never use that name, so don't bother calling me that, unlike what Jim called me all day. You can follow me on Twitter at WWEJTH1, and you can see all my Schmodown reactions on my YouTube channel, JTH. Schmodown's 8th most favorite reactor, confirmed and documented on the Facebook page. Thank you to all the people that voted. Of course, everybody that voted for me voted for everybody. So that's all well and good. So, without further ado, that's going to do it for this wonderful edition of Chokeslam Wrestling Debate. Hope you all enjoyed. Until next time, this is JTH, Malcolm, Ryan, Nico. We will see him in the championship match where Richard Schwartz will also be there. This is JTH. Thank you for watching. And until next time, we bid you adieu.